The rain hit Seoul like it had a grudge that night. Not the polite kind of rain that taps on windows and makes people reach for tea. This was the kind that came sideways, that turned headlights into blurred smears of gold against black pavement, that made the city feel smaller and more dangerous all at once. The kind of rain that made ordinary people stay inside, lock their doors, and decide that whatever they needed could wait until morning. Ji-hoon Kwon was not an ordinary person, and what had happened to him tonight could not wait until morning. He was in the back seat of a black car moving fast through the Han River district, one hand pressed flat against his left side, his jaw set in the specific way it got when he was managing something he refused to let become a crisis. His driver, Young-soo, was doing 90 kilometers through streets that technically had a 60 limit, knuckles pale against the steering wheel, eyes jumping between the road and the rearview mirror every 4 seconds. Young-soo had worked for Ji-hoon for 3 years. He had seen things in those 3 years that had permanently rearranged his understanding of what human beings were capable of. He was 24 years old, and he had the eyes of someone much older, but he had never seen Ji-hoon bleed before. That was the thing. That was what was making his hands shake against the wheel. Not the ambush itself, not the 4 minutes of controlled chaos that had erupted outside the Mapo District restaurant, where Ji-hoon had been meeting with 2 associates about a shipping route disagreement. Young-soo had been trained for that. He had stayed in the car, kept the engine running, watched the mirrors, done exactly what he was supposed to do. His training held. What his training had not prepared him for was the moment Ji-hoon got back into the car, sat down with the same controlled economy of movement he always used, and then said very quietly, "Drive." And Young-soo had looked in the rearview mirror and seen the dark stains spreading slowly across the left side of Ji-hoon's shirt. "Sir, I need to call Dr. Lim." "Yes," Ji-hoon said. Just that. One word, clipped and final. Young-soo grabbed his phone from the center console. His hands were shaking. The contacts list blurred. He scrolled too fast, overshot, scrolled back. "Dr. Lim, Dr. Lim." There. He pressed call. He did not notice that he had pressed the number directly above it. The phone rang. Young-soo pressed it to his ear, watching the road, watching the mirror, watching Ji-hoon's reflection sitting perfectly still in the back seat, with his hand pressed to his side. Like if he just held it hard enough, everything would stay where it was supposed to be. The line connected. "Hello?" Young-soo blinked. That was not Dr. Lim. Dr. Lim was 63 years old and answered the phone with his name and credentials, regardless of the hour, because he had been doing this long enough that every call at 2 a.m. was a medical emergency, and he wanted to waste no time. This voice was young, female, slightly groggy in the way of someone woken from the shallow end of sleep, rather than the deep end, cautious rather than alarmed. "I apologize," Young-soo started. "I think Give me the phone," Ji-hoon's voice from the back seat. Quiet, absolute, the voice he used when he was not asking. Young-soo passed the phone back over his shoulder without a word. Ji-hoon took it, looked at the screen for exactly 1 second. An unknown number. No, wait. A familiar exchange. He had dialed wrong. He brought the phone to his ear, and there was a breath on the other end of the line, soft and patient. The breath of someone who had decided to wait and see rather than hang up on a silent call at 2 a.m. He should hang up. He should hand the phone back to Young-soo and have him dial correctly and do this properly and stop wasting time. "I apologize for the hour," he said. "Wrong number." He did not hang up. He didn't know why he didn't hang up. He would think about that later, much later. In the quiet of his office with a glass of water, he kept forgetting to drink. He would try to identify the exact decision point, the exact moment, and he would never quite find it. It was less a decision than an absence of one. The phone stayed at his ear. The line stayed open, and from the other end of it came something he had not heard directed at him in a very long time. "Are you okay?" 3 words. Simple, completely ordinary. The kind of questions strangers asked each other when someone dropped something, when someone bumped into someone else, when someone was standing in a supermarket aisle looking confused. Not a question with weight to it. Not a question that required anything. Ji-hoon had not been asked that question since his mother. "I'm fine," he said. There was a pause, a short one but present. The pause of someone who had spent enough time around people to know the difference between fine and fine. "You don't sound fine." He said nothing. In the front seat, young Sue was staring straight ahead at the road, pretending with tremendous effort that he was not listening to every word. "Okay, listen," the voice said, and something in it shifted slightly, from cautious to decided, the way a person sounds when they have made a small internal choice. "I don't know who you're trying to reach, but it's—" A pause like she was checking her phone. 2:47 in the morning, and you sound like you're either sick or you lost a fight, and either way, you shouldn't be alone. "So, I'm going to stay on the line for a minute. Is that okay?" Ji-hoon looked out the rain-streaked window. A streetlight slid past, smeared gold. His side ached with the deep, patient persistence of something that intended to be taken seriously. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know I don't have to. I'm offering. There's a difference?" He did not respond to that, but he did not hang up. And so Mirae Shin, 23 years old, sitting on the kitchen floor of her apartment in the Mappo district, with her back against the cabinet, and a sleeve of crackers in her lap, and both feet still aching from 11 hours of standing, stayed on the line. She had been asleep for 40 minutes when the phone rang. She was the kind of sleeper who surfaced easily, which she hated, which her mother said was because she had always been a worrier, even as a small child, which Mirae said was an exaggeration, which it was not. She answered unknown numbers because her mother was in Severance Hospital on the 4th floor of the East Wing, and Mirae had learned a long time ago that hospitals called at all hours and did not always show up as saved contacts. So she answered. Every time, without question. She had not expected this. She had expected a misdial that would disconnect immediately, or at most, someone slurring an apology before hanging up. She had not expected the silence, the particular quality of it. Not empty, but occupied. A silence with something moving inside it. A silence that felt like someone standing very still in a dark room, and she couldn't tell if they were hiding or simply learning the shape of the space. And then his voice, and she had sat up a little straighter without meaning to. It was a low voice, controlled in a way that sounded trained rather than natural, the way people speak when they have spent a long time making sure their voice does not give them away. She had met people like that before. Usually they were either very professional or very private, or carrying something heavy they had decided a long time ago to carry alone. Sometimes all three. She had also noticed immediately that he was breathing slightly too carefully, the kind of breathing that takes concentration, the kind you only do on purpose when the alternative is letting someone hear that something hurts. She didn't mention that. She wasn't sure why. Instinct, maybe. The same instinct that made her refill a customer's water before they asked, made her learn the regulars' orders after the second visit. You noticed things, and you didn't always name them out loud. Sometimes people needed to not have their pain named out loud. So she talked instead. She talked about her day, about table 7, the one near the window that got the draft from the door, and the family who had occupied it for 3 hours and ordered and reordered and changed their minds and been confused about the menu and finally settled on things they then decided they didn't want. And at the end of all of it, tipped her $3 on a $40 bill and drew a small smiley face next to it on the receipt. "Like the smiley face is the rest of the tip," she said. "Like, I'm going to take it to the bank." She talked about the ceiling fan in the diner kitchen that had been broken since 2019 and that nobody mentioned anymore because at this point it had been broken for so long it had basically become part of the kitchen's personality. She talked about her feet, which had moved past the stage of hurting into the stage of simply existing differently than feet were supposed to exist. She talked about the crackers, which were the plain salted kind, because she had gotten home too tired to care about flavor. And the crackers were the first thing her hand touched in the cabinet. And that was the whole decision-making process. She talked the way she always talked when something needed filling. Not nervously, not to perform, but generously. The way you talk to someone who needs sound more than content. The way you sit with someone in the dark and don't try to fix the dark. You just make sure they know they're not in it alone. And in the back seat of the car, Ji-hoon listened. He had not listened to someone talk like this in years. Not really listened. Not the way you listen when there's nothing else happening, when the listening is the whole thing. His life was full of talking, negotiations and briefings and reports, and the careful weighted conversations of men who chose every word for its strategic value. He was excellent at listening to that kind of talking. He could hear the real meaning inside 3 layers of professional language, could identify the lie inside a technically true statement, could map the power dynamics of a room from 15 minutes of conversation. This was nothing like that. This was a girl on a kitchen floor eating crackers and talking about a broken ceiling fan, and there was nothing in it to analyze, nothing to extract, no information that had any value in his world whatsoever. It was completely, utterly useless to him. He could not stop listening. At some point, he wasn't sure when. His hand against his side had loosened slightly. Not much, but slightly. The grip he'd been maintaining, the focused muscular tension of someone managing pain through sheer stubbornness, had eased by some small degree. He noticed it the way you notice a headache when it begins to lift, rather than when it arrives. The absence of something. "Are you still there?" she asked. A natural break in the talking, checking the line. "Yes," he said. "Okay, good. You have a very intense way of being quiet, you know that?" He didn't answer, but something happened in his chest. Not a feeling exactly. More like the memory of a feeling. Something that had been still for a very long time, making the smallest possible movement. The way a frozen river moves in the first week of spring. Not breaking, not flowing, just registering that warmth exists. Young-soo's voice came from the front seat, low and urgent. "Sir, we're here. Dr. Lim is at the door." Ji-hoon looked up. They had pulled through the private entrance of his residence. Through the rain-blurred window, he could see the lit doorway and the compact, unhurried figure of Dr. Lim with his bag already open, because Dr. Lim had been doing this long enough that he had the bag open before he saw the patient. Ji-hoon held up one finger. Young-soo went silent. He would tell this story later to exactly one person, sworn to secrecy. He would say, that in 3 years of working for Ji-hoon Kwon, that was the single most surprising thing he had ever witnessed. Not the ambush. Not any of the other things he had seen in those 3 years that had rearranged his understanding of the world. One finger. Wait. For a wrong number? I need to go, Ji-hoon said into the phone. Okay, Mirae said. Her voice was easy about it. No performance of concern, no manufactured significance. Just, okay, get some sleep, whoever you are. Thank you, Ji-hoon said, for staying on. A small pause. He had the impression she was smiling slightly, the kind of smile that's more in the breath than the face. Don't mention it, she said. Good luck with whatever that was. The line went dead. Ji-hoon sat in the back seat for 7 seconds. Young-soo counted, staring straight ahead, not moving. Outside, Dr. Lim waited with professional patience. The rain came down. Then Ji-hoon opened the car door and got out and walked inside, and the night resumed its ordinary shape, except that nothing about it was ordinary anymore, though it would take him some time to understand that fully. Sang-woo was waiting inside. Sang-woo was always waiting inside, or somewhere proximate to inside, somewhere within response range, because that was simply how Sang-woo existed. He was 36 years old, had been with Ji-hoon since before the organization was the organization, and he communicated most of his more significant observations not through language, but through the precise architecture of his silences. He took one look at Ji-hoon's face as he came through the door. Not at the wound, Dr. Lim was already moving to attend to that, but at his face. And something shifted in Sang-woo's expression. Something careful and watchful arrived in his eyes. He filed it away without saying a word. Later, after Dr. Lim had done what Dr. Lim did, and gone home with the discretion of a man paid to have no memory, after the associates had been debriefed and the ambush analyzed and the necessary calls made to the necessary people, after all of that had been handled with the efficient machinery of an organization that knew how to absorb a crisis and keep moving, after all of it, Ji-hoon was alone in his office. It was almost 5 in the morning. The rain had not stopped. He was sitting at his desk with a glass of water he kept forgetting to drink, and he was not thinking about the ambush, not thinking about the rival faction that had sent their message in the form of 4 men and a disagreement that ended in exactly 28 seconds, not thinking about the shipping routes or the legal exposure or any of the dozen things that should have been occupying his mind. He was thinking about a ceiling fan that had been broken since 2019. He was thinking about $3 and a smiley face. He was thinking about the specific quality of a voice that filled silence, not because it was afraid of the silence, but because it wanted to. The generosity of that. He kept coming back to the generosity of that. She had not known him. She had not known anything about him, not his name or his position or what he controlled or what he was capable of, and because of that, she had spoken to him the way people spoke before they knew those things, the way his mother had spoken to him a long time ago before everything, like he was simply a person, not a power, not a threat, not a calculation, just a person who sounded like he might need company in the dark. He picked up his phone. The number was still in his recent calls. He looked at it for a long time. He put the phone down. He picked it up again. He looked at the number. He put it down. Outside, the rain began finally to ease. He did not call back. But before he went to sleep, 3 hours, that was all he ever took, he did one thing. He moved the number out of recent calls and saved it, without a name, to his contacts. Just the number. Just the digits. No label. He was not sure what he was saving it for. He told himself it was simply data, information. His instinct was to retain information. He was not sure he believed that. Across the city in the Mapo district, Mirae Shin had made it off the kitchen floor and into her bed and fallen asleep within approximately 4 minutes of hanging up the phone. She slept the way she always slept after a long shift, deeply, completely, dreamlessly. The call was already folding itself into the soft sediment of things that happened and were over, small and strange, and not worth examining further. She dreamed about nothing. She woke at 8:30 to her alarm and the knowledge that she had a 6-hour shift starting at noon, and her mother had a checkup at 10, which meant she had exactly 45 minutes to shower, eat something that was not crackers, and get across the city on the metro without being late. She made it in 43. Her mother's name was Shin Hyunja, and she was 54 years old, and she had been in Severance Hospital for 11 weeks, following a diagnosis that the doctors had been careful and measured about, which Mirae had learned meant they were not certain, and they did not want to be responsible for your hope. Her mother faced this with the specific attitude she had brought to every difficulty in her life, which was a combination of practical acceptance and a complete refusal to be dramatic about it. When Mirae arrived, she was sitting up in bed watching a morning news program with the expression of someone who found the news both predictable and faintly disappointing. "You look tired," her mother said, which was her version of hello. "I'm fine," Mirae said, which was her version of I know. She sat in the chair beside the bed. They watched the news together for a few minutes. Her mother asked whether Mirae was eating properly. Mirae said yes, which was approximately 60% true. Her mother looked at her with the particular attention of someone who had been reading their child's face for 23 years and had gotten very accurate at it. "You seem like you're thinking about something," her mother said. "Just tired," Mirae said. Her mother accepted this without fully believing it. She had long ago made peace with the fact that her daughter inherited her own habit of carrying things quietly. You couldn't argue someone out of a trait they got from you. The checkup went well, which meant it went neutrally, which meant nothing had gotten worse. Mirae took neutral as the small victory it was. She kissed her mother's forehead, told her she'd visit Thursday, and left with 12 minutes to get to the diner before her shift started. She made it in 11. The diner was called Heisel's, named after the grandmother of the current owner, who had opened the original location in 1987 and whose photograph hung behind the register. A small woman with a direct gaze and flower on her apron, looking at the camera like she had agreed to this photograph as a professional courtesy and not a moment longer. The current Heisel's was on a side street 2 blocks from the river, the kind of place that did not appear on any best of lists, and did not need to, because its regulars had been coming for 15 years and would continue to come as long as the soup was the same, and the lights were warm, and nobody changed the recipe for the kimchi pancakes, which nobody had, and which nobody would, on pain of collective customer revolt. Mirae had worked here for 2 years. She knew the menu the way she knew her own phone number, automatically, completely, without having to think about it. She knew the regulars, Mr. O, who came every Tuesday morning for the soft tofu stew and read a physical newspaper like it was still 1995 and needed the table by the window, but would never ask for it. So she always put him there. The university student, Ji-hoon, who ordered the cheapest thing on the menu and nursed it for 2 hours while studying, and who Mirae had been quietly undercharging for 4 months because Ji-hoon clearly needed the money, and would have been mortified to know. The woman in her 70s, who came with her small dog tied up outside, and always ordered extra of the anchovy broth to bring out to the dog in a small bowl, which was technically against health code, and which the owner pretended not to notice because the woman was 82 and had been coming since the original Seoul opened and certain allowances were made for loyalty. Mirae moved through her shift the way she always moved, efficiently without hurry, with the particular grace of someone who had done this long enough that it lived in the body rather than the mind. She took orders, brought food, refilled water, cleared tables. She remembered who wanted the sauce on the side and who needed a spoon instead of chopsticks because of the arthritis, and who was celebrating something today. She'd heard them mention it when they came in. She had conversations, real ones, not the performed warmth of customer service, but actual brief human exchanges, the ones that happened in the space of pouring tea or setting down a plate and lasted 30 seconds and were complete in themselves. She did not think about the phone call, or rather, she mostly did not think about the phone call. Once, during a slow stretch around 2 o'clock, when 3 tables had paid and no new ones had come in yet, and she was rolling cutlery at the back station, she found herself thinking about it without meaning to. The voice. The quality of the silence before he spoke. The way he'd said, "I'm fine," with such complete, professional conviction. Like a man who had said those words so many times, they had stopped meaning anything. Like a door he'd locked every morning and had been locking for so long, he'd forgotten what was behind it. She thought, I wonder if he's okay. Like you wonder about a stranger you passed on a street who looked like they were crying, and by the time you decided to turn around, they were gone. Then a table of 4 came in, and she stopped thinking about it. She did not know that 14 minutes away, in an office on the 32nd floor of a building overlooking the Han River, the man she was not thinking about was sitting in a meeting he was physically present for and mentally absent from, turning a single decision over in his mind with the focused repetition of someone who already knew what they were going to do and was simply in the process of giving themselves permission. The meeting was about the Eastern Port contract. It was an important meeting. The men in the room were senior people who had prepared extensively and had real things to say. Ji-hoon listened and responded and made 2 decisions and asked 4 questions and displayed every outward indication of being completely present. Sang-woo, sitting to his left, noticed the difference. He said nothing. He watched. After the meeting, after everyone else had filed out, Sang-woo remained behind, which was not unusual. He began gathering his own papers with the unhurried efficiency of someone who was not actually thinking about gathering papers. Ji-hoon stood at the window with his back to the room, looking at the river. The Mapo ambush, Sang-woo said, not looking up from his papers. I've identified the faction responsible. I can have a response prepared by tomorrow evening. Do it, Ji-hoon said. A pause. The sound of papers. The doctor says 4 weeks before you should be doing anything physical, Sang-woo said. 3, Ji-hoon said. Sang-woo accepted this without arguing, because arguing about this particular category of thing with Ji-hoon was a commitment you made with your mouth and then abandoned with your energy, and Sang-woo had been conserving his energy for 12 years. Another pause. The river below. The city going about its afternoon. Is there anything else you need me to look into? Sang-woo asked, still not looking up from the papers that had been gathered and regathered. Ji-hoon said nothing for a long moment. A number, he said finally. I want a trace on a number. Sang-woo wrote it down without asking where it came from. He was very good at his job precisely because he understood when not to ask questions. But he looked at the number, and then he looked at the back of Ji-hoon's head, and then he looked back at the number, and something quiet and slightly alarmed settled into Sang-woo's expression and stayed there, lodged like a splinter, as he left the room. The trace came back the next morning. Shin Mirae, 23, Mapo District, works at Seoul's diner. One family member, mother currently in hospital. No criminal record, no known associations, no connections to any organization, business interest, or individual with relevance to the Kwan network. Clean in every database that mattered. Clean in the databases that didn't officially exist. An ordinary person, completely, thoroughly, unremarkably ordinary. Ji-hoon read the file once, closed it, put his phone face down on the desk, picked it up, read the file once more, put it down again. Sang-woo appeared in the doorway in the early afternoon. He looked at Ji-hoon the way he had been looking at him since the night of the ambush, with the watchfulness of someone who had noticed a change they couldn't name yet, but intended to keep monitoring. "Don't," Ji-hoon said without looking up. "I didn't say anything," Sang-woo said. "I know what you were going to say." "Do you?" "Yes." A pause. "And?" Sang-woo said. Ji-hoon was quiet for a moment. Outside the window, the river moved, gray and indifferent, going where it was going regardless of what was decided in offices above it. "She's ordinary," Ji-hoon said. Sang-woo looked at him. "I know," he said carefully. "That's what I was going to say." Ji-hoon said nothing. "She's completely ordinary," Sang-woo said, and his voice had that tone in it, the quiet, urgent tone he used when he was saying something important in the language of saying something else. "She has nothing to do with any of this. She has a sick mother and a diner job, and no idea that she exists in any file anywhere. She is exactly the kind of person who should never come anywhere near us." Ji-hoon looked at the window. "I know that." "Good," Sang-woo said. A beat. "So we agree," Sang-woo said. Ji-hoon said nothing. Sang-woo looked at the back of his head for a long moment. Then he looked at the file on the desk, closed, but present. He said very quietly, "Ji-hoon." Ji-hoon turned. Sang-woo had used his given name approximately 7 times in 12 years. Each time it had meant something was serious enough to abandon the professional distance they both preferred. "She has nothing to protect her," Sang-woo said. "Nothing. If any of this touches her, it won't touch her." "You don't know that." "I know that I control what reaches her." Sang-woo was quiet for a long moment. He had a dozen things to say. He chose none of them because he could see from the set of Ji-hoon's jaw that the decision was not being made. It had been made somewhere in the 7 seconds in the backseat of the car, or in the 43 minutes of lying awake before sleep. And what was happening now was simply the rest of Ji-hoon catching up to it. "Be careful," Sang-woo said finally. He wasn't sure if he meant with her or with yourself. Probably both. He left. That evening, Ji-hoon told Young-soo an address. Young-soo recognized it immediately from the file. He said nothing. He drove. They went through the evening city, the lights coming on in waves as darkness arrived, the river reflecting everything in long broken lines of gold and white, the streets filling with the particular energy of Seoul at dinner time, families and couples and groups of friends moving through the lit spaces between buildings, all of them going somewhere, all of them belonging to the ordinary world that Ji-hoon moved through but had never quite lived inside. He had Young-soo stop on the street half a block from the diner. He sat in the car. The diner's sign was lit, a warm yellow against the dark street. The kind of sign that looked like it had been the same sign for 30 years, and would be the same sign for 30 more. Through the window, he could see the interior. The counter with the stools, the tables with the small vases, with the single artificial flowers that had probably been there for a decade. He could see people eating. He could see someone moving between the tables, taking an order, setting down a dish, pausing to say something that made a table of two laugh. He could not see her face clearly from this distance. He could see the shape of her, small, quick, efficient in the specific way of someone who knew this space completely. He watched her refill a water glass without being asked. He watched her stop at the counter to check something and then double back to a table she'd passed because she'd remembered something they needed. He sat in the car for 22 minutes. Young-soo stared straight ahead and concentrated very hard on existing as little as possible. Ji-hoon got out of the car. He walked to the diner. He pushed open the door. A bell above the door announced his arrival to no one in particular, absorbed immediately by the warm ambient noise of the room. Low conversation, the clatter from the kitchen, a television in the corner on low volume, showing a news channel. He stood in the entrance for a moment, while his eyes adjusted from the dark outside to the warm light inside, and he noticed a few things simultaneously. The ceiling fan that was clearly not operational, the photograph behind the register of a small, determined-looking woman, and the girl who had come around from the other side of the room and was now standing in front of him with two menus and a practiced, welcoming expression, and absolutely no idea who he was. "Just one?" Mirae asked. He looked at her. She had a direct gaze, not challenging, just present. The kind of gaze that saw you without making a production of seeing you. She was waiting for his answer with the patient ease of someone who had asked this question several thousand times and was in no hurry. "Yes," he said. "This way." She walked him to a table near the window. Not the one by the door with the draft. Not the one in the back that felt like being in a corner. The good window table? The one with the view of the street and the light falling right. He sat. She set the menu in front of him. "Water?" she asked. "Please," he said. She was back in under a minute with the water and a small dish of pickled vegetables that appeared without his asking, because that was simply what happened at this table at this hour. He looked at the menu. The menu was laminated and slightly sticky at the corner, in the way of menus that got used and wiped down and used again thousands of times. Everything on it was the kind of food that had been exactly the same for a long time, because it was exactly right. She came back. "Have you decided?" He looked up. "The soup," he said. "The doenjang jigai." She wrote it down. "Anything else?" "That's everything." She nodded and turned to go, and then he said, "Is it good?" She paused, turned back slightly, looked at him with a very faint expression of someone who had been asked this question before and had thoughts about it. "It's the best thing on the menu," she said. "In my opinion." "Your opinion is based on experience?" "I've eaten it approximately 400 times, she said. "I have opinions." He looked at her. She looked back. The expression on her face balanced precisely between professional and something slightly warmer than professional. The way it was with someone who genuinely liked people and tried not to show it too much on the clock. "Then I'll trust your opinion," he said. She nodded and went to the kitchen, and he turned to look at the window and the dark street beyond it, and the rain that had started again, lighter this time, more suggestion than statement. He could still hear her voice from last night in his memory with a clarity that surprised him. It was not the same as hearing it here. In person, it was slightly different. a different register shaped by the physical space between them rather than compressed through a phone line. But the quality was the same. The warmth was the same. The particular frequency of it that had reached him in the back of the car and done something he still did not have language for. The soup arrived. She set it down in front of him with a small container of rice on the side and a pair of chopsticks and a spoon. "Let me know if you need anything," she said. He looked at the soup. "It smells good," he said. "It is good," she said with the mild conviction of someone who was not going to be falsely modest about things they knew to be true. "Try it." He tried it. It was, in fact, extraordinary, not in any complicated way, but in the foundational way of food that is made with complete competence from good ingredients by someone who has been making it long enough to have real feeling for it, simple and serious and exactly right. He looked up. She had already moved to another table. He watched her take an order, write something down, and move to the next table without wasting motion, entirely comfortable in the space, unhurried and unperformed. He sat and ate his soup and watched the rain on the window and tried to remember the last time he had sat somewhere and simply done one thing. He could not remember. When she came back to refill his water without being asked, he said, "Is it always this quiet?" She glanced around at the room. Half full, low conversation, the news on television. "This is normal for a weeknight," she said. "Weekends are different." "Different how?" "Louder," she said. "More people who can't make a decision about what they want. It takes longer." "Does that bother you?" She considered this with genuine, brief attention, like it was a question worth answering rather than small talk to be moved through. "No," she said. "They always decide eventually. People always do." He looked at her. She refilled the water and moved on. He ate. He paid. He tipped generously, not extravagantly, not in a way that would be memorable, but generously. And she raised her eyes from the bill and looked at him with an expression that was very slightly and professionally skeptical. "Guilt money always looks like this," she said. He looked at her. It was said without heat, almost conversationally, the offhand remark of someone who had handled enough tables to have developed an accurate taxonomy of tips. "Not guilt," he said. "The soup was worth it." She looked at him for a moment, recalibrating slightly. "Okay," she said, and took the payment. He walked to the door. The bell sounded his exit. He did not look back. In the car, Young-soo said nothing. Ji-hoon said nothing. They drove through the evening city, the rain light against the windows, the lights of Seoul sliding past in long amber streaks, the river catching everything and holding none of it. Ji-hoon looked at the city he controlled and thought about nothing in particular. Or rather, thought about one thing and called it nothing particular, which was not the same thing at all. In the diner, Mirae cleared table 4 and reset it for the next customer. Her co-worker, Eunji, appeared beside her with the expression she wore when she had observed something and had decided she had opinions about it. "That guy at table 4? Yoonji said. "What about him?" Mirae said, straightening the vase. "He kept looking at you." "Customers look at servers," Mirae said. "It's how they get things they need." "Not like that," Yoonji said. Mirae picked up the tray with the clear dishes. "He ordered the soup and paid and left," she said. "Table's free." "Mirae." "Yoonji." Yoonji looked at her with the frank exasperation of a friend who had known her long enough to know exactly when she was being deliberately obtuse. "He was handsome," she said, in that slightly frightening way, like something expensive that you're not sure is safe to touch. Mirae considered this. She thought about the way he'd asked if the soup was good, not performatively, genuinely curious, like the answer mattered. She thought about your opinion is based on experience. She thought about the way he'd looked out the window while he ate, alone with whatever he was alone with. He'll probably come back, Yoonji said. People who look like that always come back for the soup. The soup is good, Mirae said simply. People should come back for the soup. She went to the kitchen. She put the dishes down. She stood at the window above the sink for a moment, looking at the rain on the alley outside. She was thinking about something, and she didn't have the shape of it yet. And she was not the kind of person who forced a shape onto things before they were ready. She washed her hands and went back out to the floor. Ji-hoon came back the next night, and the night after that.